Your brain is an extraordinary creation. It dreams, imagines, analyzes, remembers, and builds entire worlds out of nothing. But for all its brilliance, it is also ancient. It carries layers of instincts and survival programs that were shaped long before modern life existed. And deep inside those layers are subtle glitches, tiny psychological quirks that guide your thoughts and actions without ever asking for your permission. Most of the time, you don't even notice them. They operate quietly, influencing what you fear, what you want, who you trust, what you avoid, and even how you see yourself. Tonight, we're going to explore 10 of these glitches, fascinating mental patterns that shape your life far more than your free will ever does. Let's begin. Glitch 10. The preference loop illusion. You probably feel like your preferences belong to you. Your favorite drink, your favorite music, the kind of people you're drawn to, they all seem like choices you arrived at over time. But your brain has a hidden rule it uses constantly. If something feels familiar, it must be good. This is known as the mere exposure effect, and it quietly influences almost everything you choose. You might rewatch the same show not because it's the best show, but because it feels comfortable. You might buy the same brand of cereal without realizing why. You might even be attracted to people who remind you of someone from your past. Your brain rewards familiarity with a soft sense of safety, a tiny internal nod that says, I know this, I trust this, companies know this, politicians know this, musicians know this. Repetition creates comfort, and comfort creates preference. What you call your taste is often just a loop your brain has run so many times it mistakes it for genuine desire. And once you see this pattern, you start to notice how many of your choices weren't really choices at all. They were echoes of familiarity. Glitch 9, Safety Bias Overdrive. There's a reason you can receive 10 compliments and forget all of them, yet remember one negative comment for years. It's not because you're dramatic or overly sensitive. It's because your brain prioritizes danger over happiness. For your ancestors, this bias kept them alive. Missing a threat could cost them everything. Missing something positive didn't matter much. So your brain evolved a survival instinct that constantly scans for risks, magnifies mistakes, and holds on to anything that once made you feel unsafe. In the modern world, that same instinct shows up as overthinking, anxiety, self-doubt, and fear of failure. It's the reason you replay awkward moments in your head long after everyone else has forgotten. It's why trying new things feels scary even when they're harmless. Your brain is trying to protect you, but it often ends up trapping you instead. This glitch isn't a flaw in your character. It's a protective system tuned to a world that no longer exists. When you begin recognizing this instinct for what it is, a safety mechanism, not a truth, you start to see fear differently. Not as a warning of danger, but as a whisper from a very old part of you that wants you to survive at any cost, even if it means sacrificing your peace. Glitch 8. The invisible deadline trap. There's a secret about procrastination that almost no one ever teaches you. You don't procrastinate because you're lazy. You procrastinate because your brain cannot feel the future. To your brain, next week is vague. Next month is abstract. Later doesn't carry emotional weight, but a deadline tomorrow, a deadline tonight, that feels real. That creates pressure. That forces action. Your brain evolved to respond to immediate threats and immediate rewards. Long-term goals, saving money, building skills, exercising, studying, don't trigger the same urgency because their benefits feel distant and intangible. So your mind keeps pushing them away, not out of disinterest, but out of neurological design. This glitch makes you start things only when stress becomes physical. It makes you repeat the cycle of, I'll start early this time and then never do. It convinces you that you must be flawed, when in reality your brain is simply operating on ancient settings built for survival, not for planning. Once you recognize this glitch, you stop blaming yourself. You realize your mind is not resisting the task, it's resisting the timeline. And with that awareness, you can finally begin working with your brain instead of fighting against it. Glitch 7. The echo chamber instinct. Most people believe they search for truth. They believe they are open-minded, rational, thoughtful. But deep beneath that confidence lies a quieter instinct, one that shaped the minds of our ancestors long before the internet existed. Your brain doesn't seek truth, it seeks agreement. Every time someone confirms what you already believe, your brain rewards you with a tiny shot of dopamine. It feels warm, reassuring, familiar. It feels like safety. And because of that, your mind gravitates toward opinions, people, and environments that validate what you already think, even if those beliefs are flawed. This is why arguments online feel addictive. It's why you can scroll for hours and feel comforted, simply because you see people who think like you. It's why changing your mind feels uncomfortable, even when the evidence is right in front of you. Your brain interprets uncertainty as danger and agreement as protection. The echo chamber instinct isn't about stubbornness, it's about survival. Your mind wants a predictable world even if that predictability blinds you. And once you see this glitch clearly, you begin noticing how often you choose the comfort of agreement over the challenge of truth. Glitch 6. The silent energy saver mode. Your brain represents only a tiny fraction of your body's mass, yet it consumes an enormous amount of your energy. To avoid burnout, it cuts corners wherever it can. It prefers efficiency over effort, shortcuts over deep thinking. So much of your life is lived on mental autopilot without you realizing it. This is why you can drive home without remembering the drive. Why you choose the same foods and routines over and over again. Why bad habits feel so hard to break. Your brain isn't trying to sabotage you. It's trying to conserve energy. When psychologists talk about mental shortcuts, they make it sound technical. But to you, these shortcuts feel like instinct, like routine, like convenience. Your brain automatically chooses the path of least resistance, even when that path leads you away from the life you want. The dangerous part is that autopilot doesn't distinguish between helpful routines and harmful ones. It simply follows the easiest pattern available. Once you see this glitch, you begin realizing how many of your choices were never really choices. They were habits carried out by a brain trying to save energy. Glitch 5. The memory distortion reflex. Memory feels like a recording. You picture moments from your past as if they are stored somewhere inside you, waiting to be replayed. But memory is not preservation. Memory is reconstruction. Every time you recall something, your brain pieces it together from fragments. Emotion, scenery, words, imagination, other memories. And each time you remember an event, you aren't accessing the original moment. You're accessing the last version of the memory you reconstructed. In other words, every time you remember something, it changes. This is why two people can remember the same situation so differently. It's why childhood memories feel dreamlike, and why you sometimes remember things that never happened. Your brain isn't trying to deceive you. It is simply trying to create a coherent story about who you are. Memory favors meaning over accuracy. It shapes your past to protect your identity, your emotions, and your sense of stability. When you understand this glitch, you begin treating your memories with more softness. You stop assuming they are perfect, and instead see them for what they are. Stories your mind carefully rebuilt to help you make sense of your life. Glitch 4. The social radar error. Human beings are wired to belong. From the earliest days of our species, acceptance meant survival. Rejection meant danger. This instinct is still alive inside you, even if the world around you has changed. Because of it, your brain constantly overestimates how much people think about you. It magnifies embarrassment, exaggerates judgment, and imagines disapproval where none exists. You walk into a room and feel watched. You say something awkward and replay it for hours. You assume people notice your flaws far more than they actually do. But research shows something comforting. Most people are too distracted by their own lives to think about you for more than a few seconds. The pressure you feel is often created entirely in your mind. Your brain is trying to protect you from social harm, but in doing so, it often becomes overprotective. Once you understand this glitch, you begin to move through the world more lightly. You realize that the spotlight you feel is almost always an illusion, and in that realization, a gentle sense of freedom appears. Glitch 3. The false motivation signal. Most of us grow up believing that motivation is something we need to feel before we begin. We wait for inspiration, for clarity, for that spark of energy that finally convinces us to get started. But neuroscience reveals something completely different. Your brain doesn't create motivation first. It creates motivation second. Action comes before inspiration, not after. When you begin a task, even in the smallest possible way, your brain releases a small dose of dopamine. That chemical reward is what creates the feeling of motivation, not the other way around. This is why the first few minutes of anything feel heavy and uncomfortable. Whether it's a workout, a difficult phone call, or a project you've been avoiding, the hardest part is always the beginning, because your brain hasn't received its reward yet. You're not unmotivated. Your brain is simply waiting for proof that taking action will be worth the energy. Once it gets that proof, motivation finally arrives. The quiet tragedy is that many people spend years waiting to feel ready, not knowing that readiness is something you create after you begin. Understanding this glitch is powerful. It reminds you that you don't need motivation to start. You only need to start and let motivation follow behind you like a shadow. Glitch 2. The emotional override bug. We humans love to believe that we are logical thinkers. We imagine that our decisions come from careful analysis, rational thought, and objective reasoning. But the truth is far more emotional. Almost every decision you make begins with a feeling, not a thought. Your emotional brain reacts before your logical brain even wakes up. The reaction happens in milliseconds. You feel something first: an attraction, a discomfort, a sense of danger, a spark of excitement, and only afterward does your rational mind step in. And when it does, it doesn't guide the decision. It justifies it. This is why you can buy something impulsively and only later create a logical explanation for it. It's why certain people make you uneasy even if you can't explain why. It's why you sometimes ignore good advice or cling to bad habits that soothe you. Your emotional brain is ancient. It evolved when quick reactions meant survival. Your logical brain came later, layered on top like a narrator who explains the story after it has already been written. Once you begin noticing this glitch, life becomes clearer. You start recognizing which choices are emotional reflexes and which ones are intentional. And that awareness creates a small but powerful pause between stimulus and response. In that pause, you find your freedom. Glitch 1. The control illusion. One of the most comforting beliefs we hold is the idea that we are fully conscious of why we do what we do. We like to think that our choices come from personal values, logic, and willpower. But your brain is constantly being nudged by tiny environmental cues that you hardly notice. The lighting of a grocery store can influence what you buy. The smell from a bakery you pass can shift your mood. The placement of an object on a shelf can determine which item you choose without you ever questioning it. Even the softness of a chair, the pitch of someone's voice, or the tempo of background music can shape your behavior long before your conscious mind catches up. You think you make decisions, but your brain often reacts automatically to details you aren't aware of. This doesn't mean you have no control. It simply means that true control begins with noticing. When you understand how easily your emotions, your attention, and your desires can be shaped by the world around you, you start moving through life with more intention. You become less reactive and more aware. The illusion of control fades, but something far more valuable takes its place. Clarity. Your brain is a masterpiece, mysterious, ancient, brilliantly complex. But it's also imperfect, shaped by millions of years of instincts, shortcuts, and emotional echoes. These glitches aren't flaws. They're part of what makes you human. When you understand how your mind works, you stop blaming yourself for things that were never personal. Fear becomes less intimidating. Habits become easier to reshape. Motivation becomes something you generate through action. Memories become softer, and your decisions become more intentional. The more you understand your brain, the more compassion you naturally feel toward yourself. And in that understanding, you gain something powerful: the ability to navigate your life with awareness rather than autopilot. Thank you for spending this quiet moment exploring the hidden machinery of your mind. Stay curious, stay gentle with yourself, and remember, your brain is ancient, but your awareness is new, and that awareness is your superpower.